Hello, baby. This is going to be a video dedicated to Judson Supercharger, serial number 47536. And I will get into the reason why I'm doing a video dedicated to that particular serial number, because there are going to be a lot of questions coming in anticipation of a bring a trailer listing that's coming soon for this car. Along with that is going to be some questions and some storytelling about this particular Judson Supercharger, why it's important, what it accomplished back in the late 50s, early 60s on the racetrack, how it left this car. This is the Edmondson Ghia, by the way, and this is the Supercharger that has all of the race wins on it. It was separated from the car back in the 1970s, and it was reunited with the car approximately 15 years ago. And I thought a video talking about the backstory of how this thing all came to be would be of value to anybody interested in the history of vintage VW speed and potentially bidding on and being the next owner of this really special Karmann Ghia. When I acquired this car, the Edmondson Ghia, about 15 years ago, the car had a 36 horsepower Judson Supercharger on it at the time. However, it was not the original Judson Supercharger with all of the races on it. There was a story that came with the car from some very good VW, very well respected VW folks that apparently saw Judson serial number 47536 listed on eBay with a buy it now of $5,000, and it quickly disappeared. And the time estimates that I was able to get a hold of indicated that eBay listing was like 2 or 3 years before I bought the car. So this is going back probably 17 or 18 years ago from current times. So what had happened was, and this all proved to be factual, by the way, a previous owner of this car sold the original Edmondson Judson Supercharger that we're looking at here, serial number 47536, on eBay for a buy it now of $5,000. And it sold pretty fast. And it sold to a gentleman in North Carolina that collects vintage speed equipment, doesn't collect cars, but collects vintage speed equipment for air-cooled VWs. That's his passion. Very, very nice fella, very passionate collector. So when I bought the car about 15 years ago, I got this story that the Supercharger had popped up on eBay. It had quickly disappeared. To the best of our knowledge, it had been sold. So I put out a wanted ad on the internet on quite a few different websites, trying to figure out, A, is the story accurate? And B, if the story is accurate, where did the Supercharger land? And in a perfect world, is it available to put back with the car that it belonged with? So I got a phone call, and I got a phone call from a gentleman in North Carolina that, from a friend of a friend of a friend, heard that I had this wanted ad floating around on the internet, and he had some questions for me. And the first thing he wanted to know is why I was looking for the Supercharger that came off the Edmondson Ghia. And I said, well, I've got the Edmondson Ghia in my garage, And it seems like a shame that the original Supercharger is in North Carolina, but the car is in Oregon. I'd like to reunite the pair. And after him giving it some thought, took some time, he called me back and said that the Supercharger would be available as long as I promised him that it would go back on the car. And I gave him my word that it would. And I actually made a video 15 years ago of the Supercharger coming out of the box and being test run just to see if it would fire up and operate. It was later sent to George Fulci in Connecticut for a full rebuild. So what you're looking at now is the original Supercharger to the car, acquired, sent to George, rebuilt by George, and then reinstalled on the car. So fully rebuilt at this point. However, when that video was taken 15 years ago, is basically just right out of the box just to see if it would turn over and if the car would actually run. And it did. And I'll embed that video in this video so we can kind of do a current time and then an as found. I'll see if I can lace those two together. My video editing skills are very basic, but I can probably click on enough things to kind of figure that out.
Today is April 18th, 2011. I just finished mounting up and installing the original Edmondson Judson Supercharger on the Edmondson Ghia. The Supercharger that was on the car when I bought it was recently removed. That's it sitting there on the floor with the tools. The last time the Supercharger was on this car and running was 1971. It's been a while. The condition is unknown. I haven't tried to start the car yet, but I've got everything tightened up. I've got a fire extinguisher nearby just in case I forgot something. And I'm going to turn the key and see what happens. Make sure it's in neutral. Okay, it's showtime. It runs. And actually, it doesn't sound too bad. These Superchargers can get a little bit noisy. Probably idling a little bit too low. But these Superchargers can get a little bit noisy over time when the vanes and the bearings start to wear out. That's not the quietest Supercharger in the world, but it's also not the noisiest Supercharger in the world. I think we're in business. We'll probably detail it, give it a once over, but this is basically out of the box from North Carolina and on the car. That's what I'm talking about. We are back in business, just like it was meant to be. The car and the Supercharger are reunited. Awesome.
So got really lucky, and the guy that had purchased it off eBay really thought that it would be cool to put it back to the car. He said, hey man, just send me a video and some pictures of it back on the Edmondson Ghia, which I've done. And the serial number, there were two telltale signs to make sure that the Supercharger that I was buying was in fact the one I was looking for. The serial number tag was one of them. Philip Edmondson, the original owner's son, the car was heavily documented. One of the things that he had kept track of was the Judson serial number, so he had it. The other thing he had was some information about these 3 hand-painted ribs. And this was just eyeball. This was done back in 1959. But what they did, just for eyeball, doesn't change performance in any way, shape, or form. But what they did is they just hand-painted with silver paint these 3 front ribs. And what Philip said, he goes, to make sure that you're getting the supercharger that you're looking for and paying quite a bit of money for, especially considering it still needed to be rebuilt, but nonetheless, make sure it's got the serial number and also make sure that it's got 3 hand-painted ribs. And it did, and it still does. And the reason why it still does is when I sent it to George Fulci for a rebuild, I specifically asked George to make it run like new, complete rebuild, all internals, and cosmetically to leave it in original paint. And we left it in original paint as a tribute and a throwback to the Edmondson legacy. Those have been on it, those 3 painted stripes, although it may not look too important. That's exactly how the Supercharger looked every single pass down the drag strip, all the period pictures, all the documentation. When Judson decided to use this car as what was later known as the Edmondson Testimonial, which was how they marketed their Judson Superchargers, using this car, and a really cool picture that's behind me. I'll pan to it. The Edmondson Testimony was basically the success that Edmondson had with that supercharger on the racetrack for these accomplishments here. So every pass down the drag strip to accomplish that was done with this supercharger with 3 hand-painted silver ribs. Kind of neat. And while we're on that subject, it's also got a counterbalanced pulley. Those little drill marks there were done by Edmondson in his home machine shop to balance that lower pulley. So kind of some cool vintage speed goodies going on. But I just wanted to make a video of the supercharger that was sold on eBay, that was later reacquired, reinstalled on the car, sent to George, rebuilt, not repainted on purpose, back on the car today and running as new. And a very important part of history that we're looking at here, and very, very fortunate that the guy that bought this off eBay with the Buy It Now 17, 18 years ago was also passionate about having it reinstalled on the Ghia and not sitting in his display case in his collection. So thanks for taking a look. And that is the backstory on the Edmondson Karmann Ghia Judson Supercharger. Thank you.